Hey everybody, the NHL is back. We had games last night. This is to the point. Hope you're all doing well. It was fun to have the NHL back on our screens. Some bad hockey, of course, early on in the season, but hockey nonetheless. And we got a big slate of games tonight that I'll talk about here in a little bit. We got some news in the hockey world, so we'll break it all down. But also on the show today, going to react to the baseball postseason action from last night. Got some news in the NFL, a couple trades, injuries, and a big UFC turn of events last night that I did not see coming, but makes it more interesting for UFC 294 in just 10 days. So we will talk about that towards the tail end of the show. But last night, we had 3 games in the NHL, and the feature game was Chicago at Pittsburgh. Connor Bedard in his NHL debut facing Sidney Crosby. And it was a good game. If you missed it, I feel bad. I wanted to see Connor Bedard's first game. As I said many times, I applaud the NHL for putting Bedard on opening night. This is smart. He's your next big star. You need to promote him. He's playing in one of the biggest US markets, Chicago. You're playing against Pittsburgh, another market that's been huge for a long time. So I applaud that. I heard even Pardon the Interruption, which is a show on the mothership, obviously, ESPN, my favorite debate television show of all time. I still think it's the best. I watch it every day. They talked about Bedard and versus Crosby, and they thought the better game would have been Bedard versus McDavid, and I applaud them for doing it. That would have been smart as well. 2 Western Conference teams, maybe it makes more sense. Here's why they didn't do it. Canada's games don't count, meaning the ratings don't count, the money that comes in, it does not count. So putting a Canadian team on ESPN, on TNT, they do it throughout the season, but they don't do it all that much because they lose money when they do it. So Bedard versus Crosby is the best thing you could have done. Chicago starting their season going through the East Coast. Chicago will play Boston tonight on TNT in the first leg of their doubleheader. So that's why that happened, just to simplify it and kind of, if you don't realize, that's why. But I applaud Tony and Mike for thinking that way, because Bedard versus McDavid would have been fun too. The next generation of superstars. But overall, I thought Connor Bedard had a pretty solid game last night. For his first game, 18 years old, he's 18 years and 85 days, something like that. He's a young 18. And they treated him like he had played in the league for 10 years and had dominated. Pittsburgh did not allow him open ice. They didn't give him space to work, and when they did, he made them pay, or Tristan Jarry was forced to make some big saves. On the power play, Noel Acciari, who might have been Pittsburgh's best player last night, stuck to him like glue. Didn't give him space, didn't give him time to breathe, and he could hardly get the puck on his stick without having somebody all over him. So I applaud Mike Sullivan and the Pittsburgh Penguins for that game plan going in. It was smart and it was calculated. But Bedard, throughout the game, he got better. He started to stop being so stationary, start moving his feet to create open lanes, to create opportunities for him to have open ice where he can do the most of his dirty work, if you will. He doesn't look afraid. He looks like he should be in the NHL. And Chicago is going to have a tough season. They mentioned this on the broadcast several times last night. This team is still in a complete rebuild. They're looking for talent. Bedard is their big fish. They have Korchinski, Wyatt Kaiser. They have some young players in their lineup. And I like Korchinski. Thought he struggled like a bit in the game last night. He got the puck on his stick and he panicked a little too much. Seemed to every time he got the puck on his stick, he wanted to get rid of it. He'll get better though. I think he's going to be a good NHL player. But Chicago to win their first game. They beat Pittsburgh in the biggest game of Pittsburgh season last year, and they beat them in the first matchup this season. For Chicago, they at least have players who aren't selfish. I'll put it that way. Corey Perry to Nick Foligno and that empty netter is case in point. Corey Perry could have forced a shot to the net to get his first career goal as a Blackhawk. Instead, he goes tape to tape to Nick Foligno. It's in the back of the net to seal the victory. And Peter Mrazek played fantastic. I doubt they'll get those performances all year long, but he couldn't have played better in his season debut for the Blackhawks. But Bedard was very good. Got a point on a play he made at the blue line. He found open ice. You saw that he and Taylor Hall do have some cohesion. They do have a connection already, which is obviously a positive for the young kid. And every game is going to be a test for him. Every game, you start your career in Pittsburgh. His second career games at the TD Garden in Boston tonight, not an easy place to play. Then you go to La Belle Province to play the Montreal Canadiens on a Saturday night. You're in Toronto on Monday. He's not big. He's listed at 5'10". I don't think he's 5'10". I think he's smaller than that. I'm a little taller than 5'10", but I think I'm quite a bit taller than Connor Bedard. But again, maybe I'm overinflating my height here. But I don't think size is going to matter for him. Does he need to improve his face-offs? Yes, he got dominated last night by Sidney Crosby, but Sidney Crosby is one of the best guys at taking a draw in the history of the sport. So that's a tough way to start your career. For Pittsburgh, again, it's one game, but they have the oldest team in the NHL. The average age of their team is 30.6, which means 31. I don't know why you put 30.31. When you get to the 0.6, you round up. I learned that in basic math, and I could hardly pass a math test after grade 9. I figured that one out, so get it together, ESPN. But the average age of their team is 31. So you're an old team. I thought they got a little tired, I thought they got a little careless, and they threw the game away in the third period. They started turning the puck over in the neutral zone, and they didn't care as much. I think they expected a win and didn't get one. Now it's one game. I still expect them. I predicted to make the playoffs. I still think they will. For the most part, I thought they had a very good 40 minutes. You can find pockets of a game where teams don't play well. In the first game, Tampa couldn't have played better in the first period. The second period, they started taking penalties. They started being careless. And then all of a sudden, the game kind of opens up and Nashville makes it interesting. Now, Nashville, not a good team at all. The way they played in the vast majority of that game, they are not going to be a good team. Ryan O'Reilly, Philip Forsberg, they'll get their points, but overall that team is talent deficient, and they're going to struggle to win. I thought Erik Karlsson played pretty well in the first 40 minutes, and like the rest of the team, he kind of fell asleep in the third. So one game is one game. That's what it is. For Connor Bedard, it's not about results this year for the team, but it's about how he plays. I'm looking forward to watching the majority of his games because he's so fascinating, because he's a great player. Tonight, if you look at the slate, you have Toronto, Montreal, Carolina, Ottawa at 8 p.m. starts Atlantic time. Well, if you have NHL Center Ice or TSN Plus or Sportsnet Plus or any kind of streaming service, at 8:30 the puck drops Chicago and Boston. That's a perfect thing because you'll likely want to watch your Canadian teams. Well, if you don't want to watch the intermission, which I don't, so if you don't want to, you can flip over and watch Bedard play the Boston Bruins, which I think will be more entertaining than hearing Elliot Friedman, whoever else, give his opinion on the first period. But hey, to each their own. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you the potential option of what you could enjoy tonight instead of an intermission report from God knows who. But he's a fascinating player. I think he's going to be great. He's great for the game. He was on Pat McAfee yesterday, which did not see coming. Didn't even know Pat McAfee knew what hockey was. Didn't know if he knew a puck existed, but good on him. Maybe I don't give him enough credit. Scratch that. I could probably give him too much credit, so we'll move on from that. But Bedard, first game, certainly passed the eye test. Does he have things to work on defensively, winning faceoffs, things of that nature? Yes, he will. He will get better at them as the season goes on. Mentioned the Tampa game. They won a close one against the Nashville Predators. That game had a little bit of everything, a lot of penalties. Brandon Hagel scored on a penalty shot. What I will say for Tampa, I thought Victor Hedman was the best player on the ice, either team, and that's a great thing for Tampa. He did not have a great season last year, but overall, I think Tampa as a team came out with energy. They came out with jump. Last season, I thought Tampa played the entire season as if they were tired. Like they were stuck in the mud. They had a rut. And playing 3 years in a row, getting to the Stanley Cup final, will do that to you. They had a summer off. You go through different pieces. You're without your starting goaltender. But I thought Hedman was all over the ice. He was making smart decisions. He missed a few passes that you'd like to have back that ended up icing the puck. But when he's on his game, he's as good as Makar. He's as good as Heiskanen, as any defenseman in the NHL. So Kucherov scores a couple goals. Big Nick Paul scores a couple goals. Okay. I'm more interested in seeing the team overall. They looked like they had energy. They had jump. And as I said before, they beat a Nashville team who stinks. UC Saros, good goaltender. Rest of the team, not so great. Roman Josi, I feel for you playing on that team. The nightcap, we had Vegas hosting the Seattle Kraken. I thought the ceremony for the Vegas Golden Knights, lifting the banner with the slot machines, was phenomenal. I think everything the Vegas Golden Knights have done since they became a franchise has been a flat-out winner. They are fully bought into being Vegas. They're gambling, they're over the top, we have shows, and I love every second of it. You have a niche, own your niche, and they have done it. Bill Foley, the owner, loves to spend money. They win. But I thought that whole ceremony was fantastic, and they came ready to play. Again, one game, so not huge takeaways, but they're they're damn good again. They're going to be a handful in the Western Conference. You can look at the Edmonton Oilers, who are very good, and the Los Angeles Kings, who I think will be a very good team. As of now, Vegas is better than both of those teams. I like the Avalanche as well. But Vegas, if they can keep that team healthy, they'll have injuries this year. And maybe they'll have problems in net with Aiden Hill or Logan Thompson, and that may flare up. It's extremely difficult to repeat as a Stanley Cup champion. But the nucleus of that team is together. First goal of the season's by Chandler Stevenson. Marchessault Mr. Conn Smythe gets the second goal of the season. Barbashev gets the third goal, and then Jack Eichel ices it with an empty netter. That's their team. So many guys can beat you. They have lines that just come at you in waves. They have one of the best defense cores in the league. So yes, it takes a lot to get back there. You need a lot of luck. You need a lot of breaks, health to go your way. But the Vegas team has not changed much other than Riley Smith being a Pittsburgh Penguin. They'll play late at night, and people will forget about them all year long with their 11:30 puck drops Atlantic time. But that team's physical, that team is mean, and I think they're motivated to do it again. Not to mention, in the third period, Brett Howden gets ejected in the first night of the season for a hit to the head to Brandon Tanev. He'll likely get a call from player safety, and he'll likely be missing the next couple games. I believe Vegas' next game is tomorrow night in San Jose at the SAP Center. But overall, a lot of times there's complaints about opening night, teams that get the opening night slate. That's normally from people in Canada because there's never any Canadian teams, and I can only explain the reason why they don't do it so many times. But you know now if you listen to me. Also, there's more American teams than Canadian teams, and the Canadian teams never fucking win. So maybe that's another reason why they're not given opening night priority. Just a thought, though. Haven't won a championship since '93. 31 years if they don't win it this year. Well, 31 years without winning a championship. The two teams that consensus believes has the best chance of ending that drought this year, the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Edmonton Oilers, are both in action tonight. So I love schedule maker night one. I have no problem with any of the matchups. Night two, here's my beef. Toronto playing Montreal, Edmonton playing Vancouver, Calgary, Winnipeg. Calgary, Winnipeg played once in the preseason. I'm okay with that matchup. Edmonton played Vancouver 4 times. Toronto played Montreal 5 times. Why are these the opening night matchups if they're playing that often in the preseason? Don't play that team in the preseason. Go play the Metro. It's not that long a flight. Or don't play that many preseason games. So it's as if you've seen these two teams playing 6 times already. Not to mention Edmonton plays Vancouver tonight, and then they play them Saturday, a home and home to start the season. My God. It's not that hard. There's 32 teams. Pick somebody else. And you think, well, the Leafs need to start with Montreal. That's the way it starts every year. Okay. Their second game's against the Minnesota Wild. Is there a rivalry there? First hockey night in Canada this season. The Minnesota Wild are in town at Scotiabank Arena. GMAB. I'm fine. If I hadn't seen these teams so many goddamn times, am I going to watch the game? Yes. Yes. But I'm also going to watch Carolina and Ottawa, and that's more interesting to me because I haven't seen these teams play. And there's intrigue. But no. Let's keep doing this. Play each other in the preseason 85 times, then start the season playing each other. And I get it. If you don't watch preseason hockey, then you don't care. But I do. So as an avid watcher, I'm like, ugh, this again? And it's not an anti-Leaf thing for people in my life bring that up to me. I just criticized Edmonton more than I did Vancouver. There's 32 teams. Pick somebody else for the preseason. Play at a goddamn neutral site. I don't give a shit in the preseason. They played a game in Truro, Pittsburgh, and Ottawa. Wow. So you can play Metro teams in the preseason. Ottawa went to Winnipeg. They went to Winnipeg in the preseason. East versus West. No, we can't possibly do that this time around. Anyway, for the Maple Leafs, it's yesterday. So he ultimately gets cut, does not make the team. Fraser Minton, however, did make the squad. The 19-year-old will begin the season on the third line between Calle Yarncroke and Matthew Nyes. So a pair of rookies on that third line for the Maple Leafs. They also signed Noah Gregor to a 1-year, $775,000 contract. He began on a PTO. He will be on that fourth line tonight. He earned that contract with a very solid preseason for the Maple Leafs. Now, with the way the world works, salary cap, things of that nature, the Maple Leafs had to trade Sam Lafferty to the Vancouver Canucks for a fifth-round pick. That's a net negative. They didn't want to do it, but they had to do it because they wanted to keep players. They wanted to sign Noah Gregor. He makes less money than Lafferty. Lafferty makes 1.1. Gregor makes league minimum $775. So ultimately, they lose a good player that they acquired from the Blackhawks last year for a fifth-round pick. Is it a huge deal? No, but he's a penalty killer. He would have played third to fourth line minutes, and I thought he played pretty well in the postseason last year. So you lose a depth piece off your roster. Now for the Maple Leafs, this season's about winning the division. They won their division in that bubble year, which I don't even really count because you're only playing against the Canadian division, which was one of the worst periods of time watching hockey. Speaking of preseason, only playing the same team game after game after game, I'm feeling like I'm in the goddamn Matrix right now. But we'll move on. This season's about winning the Atlantic Division, about establishing a way that you play, breaking in new pieces, Tyler Bertuzzi, Max Domi, John Klingberg. That all begins tonight. This team has intrigue. This team has expectations. And this team should win their division. And if they don't win their division, the regular season is a failure. There's the benchmark. Meet it. Montreal, on the other hand, does not expect a great season. But opening nights, anything can happen. Montreal beat Toronto opening night last season with a game-winning goal by Sean Monahan. So, first game of the season, there's weird things that happen. But these two teams are in very different camps. Montreal's still going through a rebuild. While Toronto kind of visiting Ottawa. Intrigue in Ottawa right now because Darren Dreger reported this morning that the Ottawa Senators and Shane Pinto basically have a deal done. There's no stalemate anymore. They can agree to terms at any time. The reason a deal has not been reached is because the Ottawa Senators do not have money to bring in Shane Pinto. They don't have the cap space to have him on their roster. So they're not going to sign him. Josh Norris practiced yesterday. Unknown if he's going to play tonight in the first game of the season. But he might. So if he's going to be available, you can't put him on injured reserve. So he's not going to miss games. So you can't use that loophole to sign Shane Pinto and bring him on board. So they're in a tough spot. Pierre Dorion is basically trying to do what the Leafs did with Lafferty, trade his salary to another team, whether that's Matthew Joseph, who isn't a perfect player. I think he's been a bit of a disappointment over the course of his career and what Tampa ultimately expected and what Ottawa's gotten over the last couple years. But he's a solid player. He's a third, fourth line guy. He works extremely hard. He has his deficiencies, but he's not a player you just want to lose for nothing. Ottawa is in a position where they need to make the playoffs this year. Pierre Dorion knows it. DJ Smith knows it. So throwing away good players just to bring on another one doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But ultimately, with the way the system works, the Ottawa Senators will likely trade Matthew Joseph or a player like him in the next day or so. But these deals aren't easy because this is the first game of the damn season. Teams need to find money to make this work. And Vancouver had some money available. It's only $1.1 million for 1 year, and they made it happen. For Ottawa, you start your season in Carolina. That's a tough way to go. Maybe no Josh Norris, definitely no Shane Pinto tonight. But this Ottawa Senators season is extremely important. What's interesting for me is the first 2 weeks. You talk about the first game, and ultimately it doesn't mean all that much for many teams, which is true. The first 2 to 3 weeks of the season for the Ottawa Senators over the last 4 years have been it's just been abominable. They won 3 of the first 13 games last year. They won 4 of the first 15 the year before. 5 out of the first 20 the year before that. So they begin at Carolina. Home opener Saturday afternoon against the Philadelphia Flyers. Back-to-back against Tampa on Sunday. Wednesday night, host the Capitals. Saturday, hosting the Red Wings. Buffalo in there. They got a pretty soft schedule to begin the year, quite frankly. It's not a murderer's row. A lot of afternoon games at home, which you'll take. But for Ottawa, they need to start on time. They need to start the season with energy, with pace, with a purpose. They play great every year from February on. It's too late. You can't make up that many games. Will it be easier to do that this year in the Atlantic Division? Yes. But for them, they need to start the season on time. DJ Smith needs it to make sure he's employed at the end of the year, as does Pierre Dorion. So that's what I'm looking for with the Ottawa Senators. Win some games in October. Be competitive. Play some good hockey. I mentioned you have Chicago and Boston tonight. Late games, Colorado at the Los Angeles Kings. That's the second game of the doubleheader on TNT. That's a phenomenal game. Two good teams. Two teams that have made a lot of changes in the offseason. Pierre-Luc Dubois. I'm curious to see how Jonathan Drouin plays for the Colorado Avalanche alongside Nathan MacKinnon. Not to mention Cale Makar fully healthy, that team being brought back together. Rantanen, McKinnon, depth pieces. Ross Colton comes over from the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's two heavyweights in the West, two teams that are tough to play against. That's a great matchup. Edmonton and Vancouver. Anytime McDavid plays is a great game. Yes, that's true. I still hate that they're playing each other 2 times in 4 days, but I can't change that. And then you also have Calgary and Winnipeg. Winnipeg, Scheifele, Hellebuck, back, long-term. Calgary, optimism, hoping for a great season. Ryan Huska's first game behind the bench. Huberdeau, second season. Kadri, second season in Calgary. You start every season, you have hope. You haven't lost a game yet. Every team is 0-0. And you'll see what happens down the line and what you can do with your season. A team that opens tomorrow, but made a big signing on Monday that I did not talk about yet this week, is the Buffalo Sabres signing Rasmus Dahlin to an 8-year, $88 million contract. It's a big ticket. $11 million a year for Dahlin. I made this point yesterday, and I'll make this point until the cows come home. There are more bad defensemen than good defensemen in the National Hockey League. There's the median defense. There are more just average guys. The elite of the elite drop by the year. And there's some good guys. I don't think Adam Fox is an elite defenseman. That might be a hot take. I don't think he is. I think he's good. I don't think he's a superstar. The term superstar is thrown around. It's like you pick an apple off a tree and that's, oh, he's a superstar. He's a superstar. Let the other people do that. Join team being right over here with yours truly. He's a good player. He's not a great player. Hedman, superstar. Makar, superstar. Is Rasmus Dahlin a superstar? He's very good. To think what he's accomplished under pretty horrible circumstances over the course of his career, I applaud him because he has been in Buffalo's entire career and it's gotten worse and worse. But he had 73 points last year, 92 penalty minutes. He's a big physical defenseman. 15 goals. Do I think he's worth $11 million? No, I would not have given him $11 million. Not to mention, I think with Buffalo, I think Owen Power is going to be better than Rasmus Dahlin. So it makes it tricky when you're going to have two defensemen on your team that make $10 to $11 million apiece, which they're going to. Not to mention, Cale Makar makes less money than Rasmus Dahlin, so that hurts. But again, Cale Makar signed his contract before Dahlin does, so you keep the salaries moving up. That's good for the union. That's good for future players. Buffalo's been signing a lot of their pieces. They signed Cousins. They signed Tage Thompson, who's a damn superstar. He's a superstar. You're keeping Dahlin. They're going to sign Power when they have the opportunity. They signed Matthias Samuelsson to a big deal. So I think Dahlin is on the upper echelon of defensemen. Is he better than Makar? No. Is he better than a peak Hedman? No. Is he better? I think he's as good or better than Adam Fox. Absolutely. He just is. For me, he does more. He's a physical force. He can actually play the penalty kill. He's got a better shot than Adam Fox. I just like the way he plays the game more. He's more assertive. Fox is on the island with the Rangers of just playing soft hockey and nobody has a pulse on that team. Dahlin will take your head off if you want to mess with him, and I appreciate that about him. So he's up there with the greats in the sport currently. Could you have gotten him at 9.5? Could you have gotten him at 10? I think what Buffalo did here is they hedged. They got a player to take an 8-year contract. We talked about this summer with Matthews. He didn't want an 8-year deal. He wanted flexibility. He wanted to have the option to get another contract. Dahlin's 23. He'll be a free agent at 31, so he might be able to double dip again if he's still a very good player. He's still so young. That's another thing. Feels like he's been in the league forever. Well, he has 5 years, but he's still 23 years old. So they got a guy to take an 8-year, $88 million, but it's 8 years at $11 million. I think the salary cap's going to continue to jump. TV deals are doing well with ESPN, with TNT. The sport is growing despite the fact that it kind of seems like it doesn't because the salary cap's been stagnant. COVID hit the NHL harder maybe than any other sport. Maybe the CFL I could throw in there. The NFL kept playing. They kept playing games. Was there as many people in the stands, but there's bigger stadiums. The show goes on. The NHL were in this fear mode of, okay, we need to have everybody vaccinated. We have to do these divisions that are in Canada. And I would say the NHL approached the pandemic like a Democrat, not like a Republican, and businesses and sports around the world that approached it like a Republican are better off today than the ones that approach it like a Democrat. And that might sound like a hot take, just my opinion. So they're still trying to make up for, in my mind, failures for what they did during the pandemic. People might think they did it the right way, which is fine. I don't want to get into a whole vaccine issue here again, but that's why they're taking so long for their salary cap to jump up. Also, it's a sport that doesn't do fantastic in the US, but it's getting better. So you're waiting on those TV numbers to come in. You're waiting on things like that to get better, and they will for the National Hockey League. And for Dahlin, that $11 million salary might not be so bad in a couple of seasons. By 2028, maybe that number is tolerable. Maybe you're okay with it. You feel good about it because there's so many other players around the league that are making $14, $15 million salaries, and he's at a very good number. At one time, the Leon Draisaitl contract was looked at, and people said that's the dumbest contract Edmonton's ever handed out. Turns out Peter Chiarelli gave them one of the best contracts in team history. Draisaitl making $8.5 million over 8 years is the biggest luxury in the sport. He's the second best player, and he makes $8.5 million. So sometimes you gamble and you win, sometimes you gamble and you lose. Maybe this will be, I think Dahlin's going to be a very good player for a long time. I think the Buffalo Sabres are turning things around. I think they will compete for a playoff spot this year, and he's one of the building blocks of their future. And he's gotten better year after year. After struggles early on in his career, he's overcome them. He's a more confident player now. It's a big salary. It's a big contract. But I like it, and I like the player. So good on the Buffalo Sabres. It's a gamble. But like I said, if you're going to sign these players to 8-year deals, it's going to have to be at a big number. Because why the hell would you want to sign an 8-year deal and lose out on years where you could make more money? Who knows? Just we're talking about the Sens. Looks like no Josh Norris tonight. They released their lines from morning skate in Carolina. No Zach McEwen tonight. They're going to go with 11 forwards, 7D, I believe. 11 forwards, 6 defensemen on a 19-man roster tonight in Raleigh. I am led to believe if Norris can't play Saturday, this would allow them to make an emergency recall. So you got Kachuk, Stutzler, Giroux, Batherson, Ridley, Gregg, Matthew Joseph. Oof. Charche, Tarasenko, Kubalik, Parker Kelly, Kastelik. Then you have Chikrin and Shabbat, Zub, Sanderson, Eric Brandstrom, and Travis Hamonic, Korpisalo making the start. So with no Norris and with no Shane Pinto, the Ottawa Senators center group gets thin down the middle. They need those guys back. And it looks like they're not going to get any aid today. It's not going to be anytime soon. They're in a difficult spot for the first couple weeks, first couple games at the very least. Maybe Saturday they get some relief. But we'll see what happens. But the NHL should be fun tonight. Glad that it is back. Let's pivot to Major League Baseball. Texas is having a moment in more ways than one. The Texas Rangers have advanced to the American League Championship Series for the first time since 2011. sweeping the Baltimore Orioles after sweeping the Tampa Bay Rays in the wild card round. They are a perfect 5-0 in the postseason, and they will now sit and wait. Corey Seager is having a hell of a year. Batted .330. He's batting over .400 in the playoffs. Last night, first inning home run. He got signed to that big contract fresh off the Dodgers. He's been worth every penny. He's been a superstar since getting there. But he hits a first inning home run. Then we get to the second inning, and you think, okay, well, Seager's up. We're going to walk him. They put him on. Adolis Garcia hits a 3-run homer to left field, just absolutely crushes it. Awesome bat flip. And they just keep gathering steam. Evan Carter, Jonah Heim, Mitch Garver. It does not matter. The Texas Rangers have had the best offense in the postseason thus far. And now your worry is, well, they're going to the ALCS. The game 1 of the ALCS will be Sunday. Teams that have sat and wait have been hurting. Orioles did not play in the wild card round, did not win a game. Astros have had a mixed bag of results. We'll talk about them in a minute. Dodgers sitting and waiting for the next series. They are down 0-2 to the Diamondbacks, and the Braves snuck out a Game 2 win over the Phillies. We'll see where that series goes. But it looks like teams that have gotten the break have struggled in the DS. Dodgers, 100-win team. The Braves, 100-win team. The Orioles, 100-win team. All could be losing in the divisional series. For the Orioles, I predicted this would happen. Their pitching was not good enough. They have a young team. You love Gunnar Henderson. You love Adley Rutschman. They will be back. But it's quite staggering to look up. I saw this last night. Jeff Passan tweeted of the mothership. AL East, in the month of October, the only team with a victory was the Boston Red Sox with 1. Yep. Boston, the only team in October to win a game, and that was in the regular season. Blue Jays swept, Rays swept, and the Orioles swept after being told it was the strongest division in baseball. A tough way to go out. But the Rangers just have so many options. Garcia, Semien, Seager, Garver. They have guys like Jankowski can come in and defend it in left field. He's an elite defender. Not to mention, no Jacob deGrom, Tommy John, no Max Scherzer. He was not available for this series. But they do have their ace, and it's Nathan Eovaldi, who you wouldn't think would even be pitching at this point of his career because he's had 2 Tommy John surgeries. But in 2 starts in the postseason, he has had 14 innings pitched and allowed 2 earned runs. He has been phenomenal for Texas. And they play yesterday, so Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. He could pitch on Sunday in Game 1 for the Texas Rangers. So they can set up their pitching. They can be ready for that next series. But they just look like a juggernaut right now that cannot be stopped. Their offense, okay, you intentionally walk Seager, the next guy up will hit one out of the park. They're finding their time. Maybe Max Scherzer will be available for the championship series. But even if they don't, they have the bats. Their pitching has been adequate. Montgomery, Eovaldi, Dane Dunning under the bullpen. They have it going on in Texas. Why I say Texas having a moment, because we could be getting the Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros in the ALCS. The Astros are 1 win away from reaching their 7th straight championship series, which is crazy to think about. Christian Javier, who I worried about yesterday, he went 5 innings. He's now gone 16 and a third straight innings without allowing an earned run in the postseason. That's the longest active streak. Hell of a streak for him. But what's so impressive about the Astros is how they start games and how a lot of these postseason games are going. The game's over in the first inning. You look around and go, okay, do I need to keep watching this game? Astros Twins. How about the first inning? Altuve, single. Bregman, double. Tucker, single, brought in a run. And then Jose Abreu hits a 3-run home run, a 4-run first inning. And from then on, Astros had a few scares. They had bases loaded, but they got out of it. But for the Twins, what are you doing pitching to Yordan Alvarez? 3 games in this series, 3 home runs, 2 doubles. He's crushing your team. If you're in a situation, walk him. It's not against the rules. It can happen. Put him on. They do it to Seager. But credit to the Astros. They signed Jose Abreu in the offseason. I like the signing. Veteran in Chicago for a long time. Former American League MVP. He gets 2 home runs in a playoff game, and he's not known for his power anymore. But he's used to playing in Minnesota, playing against them for over a decade for the White Sox. He's still got game, he's still got power, and he had a hell of a night yesterday. But the Twins' Sonny Gray had not allowed a 2-homer game since September of 2021. He allowed 2 home runs yesterday. He had a rough start. So now the Twins are on their face. Game 4 in Minnesota, Target Field. The fans there have been phenomenal. They didn't have much to cheer about yesterday. The Twins have to keep this game close because they don't have the firepower to match up with the Houston Astros. Jose Urquidy against Joe Ryan today. I think the Astros are going to win today, and I think the series will be over. Astros against the Rangers, as I predicted. They're the 2 best teams remaining. They have the best offenses, and the Battle of Texas should ensue. But you just look to think that Houston might get to 7 straight championship series. From where they came from, this front office did it correctly. They tanked. They were losing 100 games multiple times, and they hit on their draft picks. Correa, Altuve, Bregman, Springer. They kept producing talent. Yordan Alvarez then came into the mix. When they needed a Justin Verlander, they went and got him. Lance McCullers Jr. was brought up through the system. 7 straight championship series, that's a dynasty in and of itself. That's extremely hard to do. To keep those players, to remain consistent, to battle through every year, playing that much baseball than every other team. I think the Rangers are going to be a tough out for them if they do advance today. And that'll be a phenomenal championship series. But credit the Astros and what they've accomplished. We get a pair of Game 3s in the National League today. Phillies, Braves start us off. AJ Smith-Schwarber going for the Braves. They're pitching, not all that impressive, against Aaron Nola, who was great in his first start. For the Braves, they had a hell of a comeback. They found some momentum, and they found a way to win that game. I think today's game is more important for Atlanta than it is for Philadelphia. Philly in a must-win game, at least you're at home when you go into that matchup. I don't think if you're the Braves, you want to go into tomorrow needing a win, not having your best pitchers available. Find a way to win today. I thought the Phillies would beat the Braves, but I also think these are the 2 best teams in baseball, so anything can happen. Acuna is a difference maker. Bryce Harper's the difference maker on the other side of the ball. Both teams have good offenses. Both teams play solid defense. Top of the order, you have Acuna. Then you have just a complete masher on the other side with Schwarber. This is the best series of the championship of the four divisional series, because these teams should be playing in the next round, but MLB does not reseed, which is stupid, so they're playing now. First pitch at 6 o'clock. Before the hockey starts, get a couple hours of baseball in. Love that. I think the Phillies find a way to win today. I think it's gonna be a close game. We've seen a lot of blowouts over the last 3 to 4 days. This one will remain close. I think it comes down to the wire. We might even see a big 8th inning home run for a member of the Phillies to propel them to a victory. But it could go either way today. In the nightcap, we have Diamondbacks, Dodgers. Dodgers are going with Lance Lynn. Brandon Pfaff for Arizona. If you're Arizona, you'd love to find a way to win today. Finish the series, you get a break, and you figure out whether you're going to Philadelphia or whether you're going to Atlanta for the championship series. Sit around and wait for a couple days like the Texas Rangers are with the Houston Astros and Minnesota Twins series. They didn't expect to do this. They're just flying by the seat of their pants, playing every game, seeing what happens. Corbin Carroll, Christian Walker, they find themselves in this situation, all kinds of success. I'm here for it. Lance Lynn has never been a really reliable pitcher. Comes over in the trade deadline more of a desperation thing than anything else. I don't think the Dodgers they're a team that shouldn't be swept after their regular season. And I don't think it's a great pitcher tonight for the Arizona Diamondbacks. But I'm still going to predict the D-backs sweep the Dodgers, advance to the championship series, because they're just a better team right now. They just are. Some other hockey news before we pivot to the NFL and other. The Colorado Eagles, the AHL affiliate for the Colorado Avalanche, signed Yoel Kiviranta and Peter Holland to 1-year AHL contracts. Peter Holland, former Toronto Maple Leaf, former Montreal Canadian, was at the Colorado training camp on a PTO. Kiviranta played for the Dallas Stars. The year they made the Stanley Cup final, he was on their team. Kind of surprises me he's not on an NHL team because I think he's a good enough player to be in the NHL. But two good signings for Colorado to have some depth. Peter Holland gets another year playing pro hockey. So there's just some minor league news, but I thought I'd share that with you all. I was going to go to the NFL, but I want to talk UFC. So I'm watching hockey last night, finishing up the baseball, seeing the Texas Rangers advance. Then I get a big notification on my phone. Charles Oliveira is out of his fight with Islam Makhachev in 10 days in Abu Dhabi at UFC 294. So a week from Saturday on October 21st. Charles Oliveira was in sparring. He got clipped, had a nasty gash above his eye, and he was not going to be cleared to fight. It becomes a problem when you're fighting. It could be a stoppage. So he's not going to Abu Dhabi. The fight is now on hold. But then Dana White, because there was Dana White Contender Series last night, he does his press conference. He says, we called up Alexander Volkanovski, took one phone call. He accepted the fight on 10 days' notice to come fight Islam for the second time this year. They fought in February in Perth. Went 5 rounds, was extremely close, and Islam retained the belt. But that it was 3-2 the rounds. It was extremely close. So they are going to run it back in Abu Dhabi in 10 days. But Volkanovski, who had surgery in September, who is a champion at 145 pounds, is taking this fight, is crazy. And it just shows you how good a fighter he is, how game he is. He's always prepared. And he is just the stud of studs. This was the fight of the year, and we get to see it again in 10 days. This is a better fight than Oliveira and Makachev. Two better fighters than Charles Oliveira, in my opinion. Their styles are interesting. How does Volk react after losing their first fight? So there's so many different storylines. Can Volk become a double champion? All that will be decided. But I was happy for the Oliveira fight, but I'm even more excited for this. Islam could not submit Alexander Volkanovski. He got him to the ground multiple times, but it went the full 25 minutes. Charles Oliveira is a very different opponent than Alexander Volkanovski. He's become more of a striker, not so much a grappler. He doesn't like to be on the ground as much as he did at the beginning of his career, finishing guys via rear naked choke and things of that nature. So that happens. But the fact that he takes this fight, Matthias Gamrot is the backup fighter. He doesn't get it. I somewhat feel bad for him because I'm sure he looks at it and goes, damn, this is my chance. I could have been the guy because Oliveira pulled out. I'm actually in the weight class, unlike Volkanovski. But the UFC knows what they're doing. They needed a big fight. They needed a big card for Abu Dhabi. And they got one with Alexander Volkanovski. A bigger fight, a better fight. I'm all for it. I love it. But then there's more drama. Paulo Costa scheduled to fight the Wolf, Khamzat Chimaev, in the co-main event. It was revealed on Monday that Costa has had surgery on his elbow. And he had surgery on his elbow like a week ago. So is he going to be ready to fight Chimaev? He won on Ariel's show. He said, I'll be fine. I'll be ready to fight. But it's an elbow surgery. It didn't look good. So it raises the question, do we need a backup? Do we need another replacement fighter for this event? He tweeted out this morning he's in Abu Dhabi. He's going to fight. I'm still not sold on that because he lies constantly. And he's had a number of times he's had to pull out of fights. And I don't think the UFC trusts him, quite frankly, which I don't blame them. So then it's, not many people are going to want to fight Khamzat Chimaev. Not many guys are going to want to take that fight because he's a tricky opponent. He might be the most feared guy in the UFC. It's his middleweight debut. Who's going to take the fight? Well, Costa can't go. Reportedly, this was reported, they asked Marvin Vettori. He said no. Don't blame him. Vettori on short notice fighting Chimaev, coming off a loss where he got really outclassed by Jared Cannonier. Would the UFC call Jared? Well, he's got a fight scheduled on December 2nd with Roman Dolidze. Now, this would be a more high-profile fight, but they usually don't like to scrap fights to get another guy to replace him, so unlikely. I thought of Robert Whittaker. Whittaker has not fought since July. He's in a middleweight division. There's not a whole lot of fights that make sense for him. He's fought Vettori a couple times. He's fought obviously Israel Adesanya twice. He's lost to Dricus du Plessis. He's not going to get the next title shot against the champion. So if you want to fight a guy, he's not in the top 5, but he's regarded as a top 5 fighter, fighting the Wolf would make some sense. But again, you have to take that fight in short notice. Does Whitaker want to do that? Then we get just a couple minutes ago, Daniel Cormier, Gilbert Burns are on Twitter, and they're floating the idea that the replacement fighter, if Costa can't go, and this is another guy I thought last night, how about Kamaru Usman? Kamaru Usman, who the former champion at 170 pounds, great champion, has lost his last 2 fights at 170, but he really doesn't have anywhere to go in that weight class. Okay, he might fight Bilal Muhammad in Toronto in January. Sure. That fight makes sense somewhat, but really doesn't make that much sense for either guy because Bilal was promised a title shot after defeating Gilbert Burns in a 5-round fight in May. He's going to go fight Usman. What if he loses that? If Usman wins it, is he really going to fight Leon Edwards after losing to him twice? So he's kind of in a situation where he can't win. He's in the Whitaker situation in the middleweight division. What if he moves up to 185 pounds, which he can do, because he used to wrestle. This guy was a national champion wrestler. He used to wrestle at 184 pounds. So what if he moves up to 185, doesn't have to cut as much weight, and he gets a huge fight against Hamza Chimaev? He said in the past he didn't want to fight at 185 because he would not fight Israel Adesanya because they're both African fighters. I understand that. I respect that. Adesanya is not the champion anymore. Adesanya lost to Sean Strickland. We haven't really heard from him since that fight in September. Is he next? Is it going to be Dricus? Who the hell knows? So if he's not next, maybe Kamaru can swoop in, get a couple fights at middleweight. He's at the tail end of his career. One last push for the title. Just a thought. Gilbert Burns sent a picture of Kamaru Usman in the octagon training. That fight makes more sense to me than him fighting anybody else, than him fighting. It's interesting. It's a tough fight to take on short notice, and the UFC might not want it. But if I'm the UFC, again, Abu Dhabi's paid a lot of money to get these pay-per-views, and they want a big event. And they got one. The card's still going to be great. If Costa stays in, he fights with the elbow injury, it's still going to be a very fun card. But to me, Usman versus Chimaev, and then Volkanovski versus Makhachev 2 are both better fights than the original scheduled programming, which makes the event even bigger. Not to mention, you get to pair that with Johnny Walker and say the light heavyweight fight. Johnny Walker and Magomed Ankalaev for the third fight on the main card, which is awesome. Awesome light heavyweight fight. 2 guys that are on the come up. We haven't seen Ankalaev fight since last December. How is he? How is he going to look? What's he feeling? He got robbed. He should have been champion that night. Johnny Walker's been on a roll. Tim Elliott, Muhammad Mahayev. Flyweights. We got some good fights here. Some really good fights. But this card's completely up in the air. I don't know what's going to happen. Costa said he's fighting. So as of now, that's the fight. Usman, that'd be awesome too. Or Whitaker, but I don't think Whitaker's going to do it. But again, if I'm Whitaker, who else are you fighting at middleweight? You're going to have to go way down in the rankings, and I don't think he wants to do that. He's not going to fight a guy like Brendan Allen. I don't think. You have to fight a guy you've already fought, and does that really do anything for your career? Does it really bump you up in anyone's opinion of you? Now, of course, Volkanovski taking this fight puts another card up in the air because in January, Volkanovski was reportedly scheduled to face Ilia Topuria for his 145-pound title. Knowing Alexander Volkanovski, he very well could turn around and fight in January. Because that's just who he is. He's a psycho. He doesn't care. He just wants to fight. He wants to be multiple champions. He wants to be regarded as one of the best of all time, which he is. But that Topuria Volkanovski fight, of all the fights to make in UFC right now, I love Makhachev Volkanovski too. It's one of my favorites. Topuria Volkanovski is right up there as well. Because I think Topuria is the biggest test Volkanovski has had at 145 pounds since Max Holloway. Those first couple fights were extremely close. Now, they talked about maybe now that they booked this, you go Max Holloway versus Topuria, 145 pounds for the interim title in Toronto in January. That would work. That's a good fight. I don't think they want to put Holloway in that fight, personally. Maybe he could fight Aljamain Sterling in 2024, which I've been pitching for a while. I think it makes sense for both men. But the UFC is always doing something. You never know when somebody's going to be injured. You never know when a card's going to be turned completely upside down. And that's what happened here. Charles Oliveira has a nasty gash. He's out of the fight. And now Volkanovski steps in. He's flying this morning to Abu Dhabi to prepare, get ready for the time change for his battle with Islam Makhachev. And for Islam, he haven't fought since February, and it was against Volkanovski. And now you get Volkanovski again. That's a tough slate. 2 straight fights against that guy. His last 4 fights, Charles, Volk. So he fought before Bobby Green, then Charles, then Volk, and now Volk again. That's a murderer's row of opponents for Islam Makhachev. He's facing back-to-back guys. He's facing a guy who's not even in his division, which is crazy in and of itself. Charles got injured. He didn't mean to get injured. He likely would have been available for a fight, but does this affect him getting a title shot in the future? Knowing the UFC, I think so. I think it's better for him if Volkanovski wins this fight because they haven't fought before, and that's a fun matchup. But do I think if Islam wins and it's Islam Charles in, say, February or March? I don't think so. I don't think the UFC's doing that. I think there's too many guys in this division that are worthy of an opportunity, just have earned a look. Gaethje, Islam, big fight if he is to win, or even Gaethje, Volk. I mean, that's huge. Poirier, Chandler, who the hell knows? But I guess Conor McGregor's back, and you saw the testing pool this morning, so he might be back. There's Gamrot, who's the backup fighter for this one. That means he's likely in the mix. Beneil Dariush, Armin Tsarukyan. I think of all those, I think Gaethje would supersede Charles in the next fight, because I think he's a brand name. People love watching him fight. He can sell out any arena. He has a history because he did lose to Khabib in Khabib's retirement fight. So can he beat his protege? Can he beat Islam? Lot to be decided. But this event just got more spicy. I don't know if we're done with it yet, because we could have more replacement fights. We could have more people come into the mix. I will keep you updated over the next couple of days if anything else happens. Now to the NFL. It's confirmed yesterday, Justin Jefferson, he's out at least 4 weeks. Vikings without their best receiver. They're 1-4. They need to start a fire sale. They need to shop Kirk Cousins. We talked about this a bit yesterday. They're not going to win many games without him. They're already 1-4, having a tough start to the season. Do teams want Kirk Cousins? That's a whole other story, but I think there's teams that could certainly use him on their roster. Los Angeles Rams traded Van Jefferson, wide receiver on their team. He's been on their team for a long time. He was on their Super Bowl team. Wasn't getting used much this year, in particular when Cooper Kupp returning. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. He had 2 snaps on Sunday, so they traded him to the Atlanta Falcons, which is odd because Atlanta seems to have more weapons than any team in the NFL. Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Mac Hollins, Hayden Hurst. But now they get Van Jefferson to add to the mix. I'm still not high on their quarterback, Desmond Ridder. He had a solid game over the weekend. With the weapons on this team should be good. They're 3-2. So they had another deep threat to this team. We'll see what happens with Van Jefferson in the ATL. And then this morning, Anthony Richardson, who hurt his shoulder this weekend. It was confirmed he might need surgery. He's going to go on the injured reserve. He is going to miss at least 4 games, but the injury is a 4 to 8 week injury. So that means that could keep him out till Christmas. For Anthony Richardson, the 3-2 Colts, who have been a good story so far this season, he's injured. He's running a lot. He's putting himself in dangerous positions, and it's taking a toll on his body. It was just week 1. Trevor Lawrence told him, you need to be careful. You need to slide because you're going to be hurt. Oddly enough, the Colts play the Jaguars this weekend, and Anthony Richardson will not be available. He's been impressive in his rookie season so far, but if you're not on the field, you are no good to anybody. The Colts do have one of the best backups in the league in Gardner Minshew, so I think he will keep them competitive. He will keep them in games. But for Richardson, I think you just have to evaluate. You're big, you're tough, but your body can break down. Missed a game with concussion. Now you're going to miss 4 to 8 games with the shoulder injury. You need to be present for your team. You need to be available. To me, Jalen Hurts is the perfect quarterback because he does a perfect blend of running and then also getting down. He knows how to slide. He knows how to take a hit. He doesn't put himself in those positions to get dinged up. Richardson's running over the field. He's being flimsy, and you fall down on that shoulder, you get crunched, and before you know it, you're in deep trouble, and by the time you come back, your season could be over. Colts are at the Jaguars this weekend, divisional game. They then host the Cleveland Browns, host the Saints, go to play the Panthers, play in Germany against the Patriots. Then they have their bye week. Maybe the end of November, that's when he could return. after their bye. That's what I'm thinking of, Thanksgiving weekend. He returns to play the Bucks, but again, it could be longer than that. Adam Schefter was saying this morning. No guarantee that it's just 4 weeks. He could need surgery. So, lots of interesting things here. It's tough. I like watching him play. I do think that Gardner Minshew will keep the Colts in games. They have decent talent. Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss, a two-headed monster at the running back position. Their defense is solid. They're playing a division that isn't a world beater. But the fact that they're 3-2 after 5 weeks is really impressive to me because I didn't think they would be 3-2 after 5 weeks. They beat the Jags in week 1. Sorry, they lost to the Jags in week 1. They were leading after the third quarter. The Jags bounced back, found a way to recover. So they meet for the second and final time this weekend. Jags returning after playing 2 games in London, so maybe get a little advantage against the Jags. The fact that they didn't take their bye week after 2 games in London. But it's just tough news because he is a good player and you want to see him play. And the Colts will have to move forward without him. With Gardner Minshew, Sam Ehlinger now becomes the backup quarterback, and they sign Kellen Mond to their practice squad. Other rumblings around the league. The Broncos played tomorrow night against the Chiefs in a Thursday night game that I think Al Michaels might just convulse on the air because he's so sick of these Thursday night games. But here's a report per ESPN. Some NFL teams believe that the Broncos will listen to trade offers for wide receivers Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, as well as players on defense. The report adds nobody's trading for Russell Wilson's contract. The report also says that Denver is not interested in parting ways with star cornerback Pat Surtain because they see him as a building block. But if the Broncos lose tomorrow night, they're 1-5. And then they play the Chiefs 2 weeks after. So you could lose 2 times to the Chiefs in 3 weeks, and your season is really over. And the trade deadline is Halloween, right after Halloween. So you basically have 3 weeks, and those 2 of those 3 weeks for the Broncos are against the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. And this time on a short week on a Thursday night at Arrowhead. I think they will tear it down because I think teams are going to want these players. And I think Sean Payton will be smart enough to realize if I'm on a shitty team, if we're not playing well, I'm going to at least want a quarterback that I like. For whatever reason, he does not like Russell Wilson. He's like everybody else. They don't get along. He seems to blame him at every turn. And Russell Wilson's been good this year for the Denver Broncos. He's turned the ball over twice in 5 games. He's on pace for under 10 interceptions for the season. But the team's losing. They have a historically bad defense. And Sean Payton's taking out his vitriol on Russell Wilson. Now, getting rid of that Russell Wilson contract in the offseason, that's a whole other story. How that happens, I don't know, but that's not Sean Payton's job. I'm sure he'll be telling that to the general manager. Figure it out. Because I either want Drake May or I want Caleb Williams or I want Michael Penix Jr. because we're not getting it done here. And we see this in hockey when there's a generational prospect. Teams have to make a decision on what they want to do. Do we want to tank? Do we want to keep going? The Broncos and the Vikings are interesting teams to me because they are in similar spots. You're 1-4 and you expect it to be better. But you're not, and you're entering a tough part of your schedule, in particular for the Broncos, where you're going to lose games. The Vikings thing, well, you don't have your best wide receiver. So do we keep playing competitive? Do we keep trying, quote unquote? Or do we kick the can down the road and try to get a generational prospect at the quarterback position? Because it can completely change your team if you have competent coaching and you know what you're doing with that quarterback. Look at Andy Reid. Look at the Cincinnati Bengals, I would argue, with Joe Burrow, with Zach Taylor. They knew what they had, and they built a pretty damn successful program ever since. Caleb Williams is that good. He is that special. He's worth getting the first overall pick. Now, Carolina Panthers, worst team in football. They don't have their first round pick this year. It belongs to the Chicago Bears. But in the NFL, you need to be the worst team. To get the first pick, you need to be the worst team out there. So what do these teams do? You're coming upon the time you have to make a decision. Do we want to tank? Do we want to try to get one of these generational prospects? Sean Payton could have got the Chargers job. He wanted the Denver job. They would have fired their coach Staley with the Chargers to hire Sean Payton. I truly believe that. But he wanted to go to Denver instead, probably because more money and all that, but it hasn't looked good so far. And he has not looked like a great coach since coming back into the league. But if one season is horrible and then you get a Drake May, who he's got a huge arm and he looks like a Josh Allen prototype, and he's playing great for the North Carolina Tar Heels, and he could be a Denver Bronco for years and years and make you look better as a coach and maybe compete with the Chiefs and get back into the swing of things and bring Denver back to relevancy because they've been shit since Peyton Manning retired after winning the Super Bowl in 2015. Then everything's okay, and you've lived up to your contract, and you look like a better coach because you had that success. We know what Carolina is. They're horrible, but they're not trying to be horrible. They're just horrible. The Bears, they're a pretty bad team, but could they beat the Vikings this weekend? Yeah, they could. We'll pick that game on Friday, but could they beat them? Yes, and I think it'll be a competitive game. Are they a great team? No. Denver's not a good team. Whether they want to be a good team or they don't, they just are not. The Jets just beat the Denver Broncos. That tells you everything you need to know with Zach Wilson at quarterback. So, yeah, it's only week 6, but it's also, you're coming up on decision time on where you want to go and what decision you want to make on what your future is going to be at quarterback and beyond. To close up, we started with hockey. We'll finish with hockey. Good story this morning. Lindy Ruff, head coach of the New Jersey Devils, signed a multi-year extension with the team. He got the team to the second round of the playoffs last year. He's had such an impact on the young players. He's built a culture in New Jersey. He might be 64. He's one of the oldest head coaches, but he's still doing it well. Devils plan to be another competitive team this year. Try to compete for the Stanley Cup, which I think they will. Lindy Ruff's a good coach. He's earned an extension. I'm happy for him. He was one of 4 coaches entering the year with no deal after this coming season. The other 3, DJ Smith in Ottawa, Rob Brendamore in Carolina, which is an interesting name, and Todd McClellan in Los Angeles. Reportedly, they are trying to work on an extension. I know they want to try to get it done before the season. We'll see what happens. I don't expect DJ Smith to get a deal within the season unless the season really goes well. Rob Brendamore in Carolina. He loves coaching there. They've got a great team. They should compete for the Stanley Cup. I have them getting to the Stanley Cup final in the East. But if he was on the open market as a head coach, there would be teams willing to pay him more than Carolina is in Canadian markets. Like maybe the Ottawa Senators and Michael Andlauer, who would love to have a great coach to make a splash for his first big decision on the job alongside new president Steve Staios. We got Major League Baseball playoffs tonight. We got the NHL back in full swing. The NBA is back in a couple weeks. UFC drama. It's all here in the world of sports. Hope you all have a great rest of your hump day this Wednesday. We'll be back with you tomorrow to talk about it all. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the support. As always, this is To The Point.